amendment on increasing transparency on UAPs, or unidentified anomalous phenomena. UAPs generate a lot of curiosity for many Americans, and with that curiosity sometimes comes misinformation. So my amendment will require the National Archive and Records Administration to create a collection of records from across government agencies that can be declassified for the public's use, similar to the approach used in 1992 with the JFK Assassination Records Collection Act. These records will carry a presumption of immediate disclosure, which means they can only remain classified with good reason. I thank my colleagues who worked with me on this legislation, Senator Rounds, Rubio, Heinrich, Gillibrand, and Young, for their partnership on this amendment. And as many know, my mentor and dear friend who I miss so much, Harry Reid, was passionate about this issue. And so were Senators Stevens and Inouye. So I'm glad we could get this into the manager's amendment. For these and many other reasons, I look forward to beginning floor consideration of the NDA bill today. The four things I've mentioned, dealing with fentanyl, dealing with competition with China, dealing with AI, and with making public the UAP phenomena and what we know about them in an unclassified way, are all important additions to the defense bill, and I'm glad we added them in. I thank both sides for their good work, and I hope we can pass this important bill without needless delay or controversy.
Gains steam here in Washington, which is UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena.
Yes,
there's
I know
going
what
to
that
be
is.
a House Oversight Committee hearing at the end of this month. Senator Schumer has put forth an amendment to the NDAA that is modeled after the JFK Assassination Records Collection Act. What level of transparency does the Biden administration believe that the American public deserves and should have as it relates to UAPs?
Well, without speaking to proposed legislation, I won't do that. As you know, the Pentagon has stood up an entire organization to help collate and coordinate the reporting and analysis of sightings of UAP across the military. Before that, there wasn't really a coordinated, integrated effort to do that. And of course, we will always want to be as transparent with members of Congress and with the American people as we can, considering national security concerns.
This used to get laughed at for quite some time, for years and decades.
What gets laughed at?
The idea of Congress taking this up. I mean, Gerald Ford talked about this as a congressman back in 1966, and here we are, what is that, 60 years later, give or take. Is this a legitimate issue? Does the administration believe that getting to the bottom of these sightings in the air, is it a real concern? Is it a real legitimate issue as you see it?
Yeah. I mean, we wouldn't have stood up an organization at the Pentagon to analyze and try to collect and coordinate the way these sightings are reported if we didn't take it seriously. Of course we do. I mean, some of these phenomena we know have already had an impact on our training ranges. For when pilots are out trying to do training in the air and they see these things, they're not sure what they are, and it can have an impact on their ability to perfect their skills. So it already had an impact here, and we just want to better understand it. Now, we're not saying what they are or what they're not. We're saying that there's something our pilots are seeing. We're saying it has had an effect on some of our training operations, and so we want to get to the bottom of it. We want to understand it better. So, yes.
Do you believe these whistleblowers that have come forward?
I'm not going to talk about individual whistleblowers.
Thank you so much, John.
News Nation has extensively covered this for you, and we've had an exclusive interview with the whistleblower, a high-ranking federal officer who revealed that the U.S. government has a secret UFO retrieval program. Now a press conference will be held tomorrow to provide more details into the House Oversight Committee's upcoming hearing, which is scheduled for next Wednesday. Joining us now to discuss is Robert Powell, executive board member at the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies. Robert, thank you for your time. Let's dive right in. One of the leading lawmakers heading this hearing says the public won't be disappointed. What are you hoping to see come out of this hearing?
Well, I would hope that we see strong evidence regarding the government knowledge of what's going on. And if there is a top secret SAP program which is used to investigate these unknown technologies that come supposedly from elsewhere, then it's important that we get the actual government documents that prove this. And that's going to be difficult for Congress because a congressman can't just automatically see top secret SAP documents. So it's going to be a big job for Congress to see if they can actually get a hold of these documents.
Do you think Americans will ever see hard evidence of alien technology?
You know, in a way, Kelly, we've already seen some good evidence of alien technology. There is radar data and excellent witness data that indicates there are objects that move through our atmosphere with over 100 G-forces of strength. For example, you and I are experiencing 1 G-force as we sit here in our chairs. 100 G-forces is 100 times the force of gravity. At 3 to 4 G-forces, you will begin to pass out. At 15 to 20 G-forces, a aircraft, the structural integrity just comes apart. So to have craft that are moving through the atmosphere, accelerating and decelerating with that level of force is indicative of control by some intelligence that's well beyond us.
And so you outlined a few of these aspects here, but I did want to ask you, experts are supposed to testify at this hearing, as you know. We've heard from some of them who say that many UFO claims can be explained by unmanned aircrafts or weather phenomena. You have 28 years experience in the engineering industry. So if you were asked to testify, what attributes would you share must be present for a UFO claim to be abnormal?
I've studied this subject for over 16 years now, and the one area characteristic that I would look for is extreme acceleration, as I mentioned. That type of acceleration is something we do not have the capability now, and it does not exist in black programs. It's the type of acceleration that you would expect if someone was capable, for example, of interstellar travel. So that's what I would look for, is extreme acceleration.
And we're seeing a lot of bipartisan support around hearings, both Schumer and House Speaker McCarthy. What's been your reaction to that?
I think actually that's excellent. I mentioned that about 3 years ago in a Washington Post article, that Republicans and Democrats seem to be able to find this one topic that they can come together on. And it's a good thing to find topics that our two parties can find agreement on. So I'm very happy about that.
Yeah, maybe we'll move a little faster with some answers. We've got about 10 seconds left, but yesterday we reported on what seems to be an unidentified object that washed up on the shores in Australia. Are people genuinely becoming more interested in UFOs, do you think?
I think people definitely are becoming more interested. That particular object that washed up in Australia is probably not a spacecraft, and if it was probably part of a satellite. But nonetheless, it does gain people's interest.
Yeah, it's got a lot of us talking. All right, Robert Powell, thank you for your insight.
Big stuff that's been happening in the last couple of days on top of an announcement. Let's go ahead and put this up on the screen. Senator Schumer and Mike Rounds are introducing new legislation to declassify government records related to unidentified anomalous phenomena, aka UFOs, modeled actually after the JFK Assassination Records Collection Act. By the way, I guess I have to do this now. My fiance does work for Senator Schumer, so full disclosure. But whenever we're looking at this legislation, the most important language is one that jumps out immediately, and that is specifically about, quote, non-human intelligence. So let me read directly from the text of the bill here. The term non-human intelligence means any sentient, intelligent, non-human life form, regardless of nature or ultimate origin, that may be presumed responsible for unidentified anomalous phenomena or of which the federal government has become aware. So specifically written in the text. Now, in terms of the UAP phenomenon, here's how they describe it. Quote, means any object operating or judged capable of operating in outer space, the atmosphere, ocean surfaces, undersea, lacking prosaic attribution due to performance characteristics and properties not previously known to be achievable based upon commonly accepted physical principles. Unidentified anomalous phenomena are differentiated, are both attributed and temporally non-attributed objects by one or more of the following observables: instantaneous acceleration absent apparent inertia, hypersonic velocity absent thermal signature and sonic shockwave, transmedium such as space to ground and air to undersea travel, positive lift contrary to known aerodynamic principles, multispectral signature control, physical or invasive biological effects to close observers and the environment. So this is spelled out straight up in legislation. We're talking here about the freaking Senate Majority Leader who's including this, and this would ride as an amendment onto the NDAA, which is what funds the entire Pentagon. So this is the strongest and most clear language to date that has come from Congress. Congress is fed up. After the whistleblower allegations of Dave Grush that came out, the Pentagon continues to obfuscate. They basically called him a liar. We'll see. I absolutely don't think so, considering what the even Inspector General of the intelligence community said about him, said that he has credible and highly sensitive and timely allegations that are being put forward. You can go watch the interview that he did with Ross Coulter yourself if you want to judge for how credible he is. I found it incredibly compelling. But put that aside. Now we're talking here about actual Congress and hearings, putting people under oath. So let's go to the next part here, please, where the White House was actually asked about this yesterday, and the spokesperson himself, John Kirby, had this to say.
Some of these phenomena we know have already had an impact on our training ranges. For when pilots are out trying to do training in the air, and they see these things, they're not sure what they are, and it can have an impact on their ability to perfect their skills. So it already had an impact here, and we just want to better understand it. Now, we're not saying what they are or what they're not. We're saying that there's something our pilots are seeing. We're saying it has had an effect on some of our training operations, and so we want to get to the bottom of it. We want to understand it better. So, yes.
We want to understand it better. On top of that, Crystal, we got some big news here. Let's go ahead and put this up there on the screen. The House Oversight Committee will hold a hearing on UAPs. This is from Representative Tim Burchett on Wednesday, July 26th. So that's going to be next week. Already doing some planning and some interesting stuff that'll be happening. Now, in terms of that hearing and who's going to testify, there's still a lot of questions about it. According to Ross, quote, Representative Andre Carson, we played actually some clips about him before. He was the first UAP hearings that were held in Congress. He's a Democrat from New York. He says that he would actually love to get Dave Grush to the hearing before the House Permanent Select Intelligence Committee on Intelligence, but, quote, he is currently in the minority. So we'll see how that works. So we don't yet know who the witnesses are going to be before the Oversight Committee. I should also note, Burchett himself, he's a believer. This guy knows a lot about Roswell, the history. So he's been one of the people pushing for this behind the scenes. But overall, I would say that this is a victory in terms of getting transparency and answer from these lawmakers. I mean, to have the Senate Majority Leader put a rider like that in Congress is just extraordinary. I mean, you heard the terms that I use.
Yeah.
It hopefully will become literal law of the United States. So to have that out in writing and demanding answers, that's pretty big.
So I have a few questions for you. So that whole list that you read off that's in the amendment here.
Right.
That, transmedium, biological effects, and supersonic, hypersonic speed, or whatever. Like, where does that come from?
They come. You mean in terms of
where do they get that particular
list
from?
Reports. I mean, we've played a lot of video here before about that show some of these alleged incidents. Not exactly, but in terms of the witness reports that have come out from Ryan Graves, from David Fravor, and a lot of them report objects that appear to defy the laws of physics that you can see that are on video. Transmedium is one that's been reported for a long time from people in the U.S. Navy and in the U.S. Air Force, specifically being able to go sea to air almost seamlessly. And in some cases, even reporting seeing things that were under the ocean. And transmedium actually would make sense if you had some sort of, not even propellant, because that's probably the wrong way to think about it in terms of the way that these things move. But it would make sense in terms of the way that something that does defy the current laws of physics would have to be able to theoretically move between these. And the medium itself, air or sea, should not matter, as it would to like a conventional jet engine. That's where they get the term from.
The thing with Kirby is confusing to me, because he probably has like the highest classification level you could possibly have. So doesn't he already have access to everything there is to know about this?
But I don't think it's true. I mean, that's what Dave Grush really should. I mean, look, I know a lot of people who have very, very high top secret clearance. And one of the reasons why it's called TSSCI, top secret compartmentalized information, is because it's compartmentalized. It's a need to know program. So, I mean, I've said it before. John Podesta, who is a freaking White House chief of staff, they have something, I believe it's called Yankee White. That is the highest clearance that you can get whenever it's the president of the United States and core national security people around him. He tried to find out and they wouldn't tell him. So if he's the one who's trying to find out, what are you supposed to do? Bill Clinton is on the record saying, quote, I am embarrassed to say that I tried to find out and I couldn't really get to the bottom of it when he was the president. So I mean, there's a show in the UK, this is more akin to their system, called like Yes Minister. And what it effectively boils down to is in the UK, because the government is constantly like changing, but whoever the secretary of the, what do they call them? Exchequer or whatever, in terms of their treasury secretary. So their treasury secretary is constantly like moving in and out as an elected member of parliament, but there's a permanent bureaucracy that the permanent bureaucracy is always like, yes, minister, absolutely, we'll get on that. And they just do whatever they want. Yeah, because they're the ones who are actually in the permanent government. That's how they think of government, whereas we kind of tend to think of it as elected. And while you would want us to live in a more directly responsible system, the truth is that the deep state and all of these things are real. And
then my last question on this is like, if John Kirby can't get answers, how hopeful are you that, you know, this effort to declassify these documents is going to actually yield any real results?
I think it's about pushing. I mean, let's think about the Church Committee. The Church Committee, and a lot of people don't know about this, but back in the day, the Church Committee was an extraordinarily important event because they exposed all the wrongdoing of the FBI and the CIA and the intelligence community, which was completely out of control on domestic soil from the 1950s to the 1970s. You want to know why that we even knew anything about it? It's because, Crystal, a bunch of militants broke into an FBI warehouse and stole some papers. And because of that, we got this name. And we said, hey, what the hell is this name? COINTELPRO. Based on COINTELPRO, MK Ultra, and all of that was only as a result of people knowing what terms to FOIA, which then, FOIA is the Freedom of Information Act for people who aren't nerds like me, and then was able to come and be analyzed by the Church Committee. And these guys were in the Oversight Committee. They had no idea about what was going on here. So the point here is about public pressure, about people like Grush, who sees people like us talking about this, Jeremy Corbell, Ross, and out there and say, hey, you know, I'm looking at some stuff which directly contradicts what this guy is saying in Congress. And I feel pretty compelled to come out and to talk about it. So do I think Congress is going to get the answer? No. Will it inspire, though, maybe more Dave Grutches, somebody even with even more compartmentalized information to come forward? Will it maybe inspire, and I'm not advocating this, to be clear, a future mission like what happened with MK Ultra and COINTELPRO about literally going and stealing documents to try and figure that out? Maybe it'll inspire a next Daniel Ellsberg. It's just about starting the conversation. And I think that's what it will do. And it also, it exposes lies. So, you know, our current committees, we've gotten Sean Kirkpatrick, this guy, on the record being like, yeah, these things, we don't have any possession of these technology. So if it turns out to be true, he's a liar. I mean, now, I'm not saying he'd suffer any consequences. Remember when Clapper lied to Congress about the NSA? It's not like anything happened, but, you know, he did, at least for some people. You can always point to his credibility in the future.
There's a little bit of public shame.
Yeah, be like, he's on video. He literally lied. Like, he lied bald-faced to the Congress. So I think we very likely will be able to see that with this topic. I'm really excited about it. I'm going to try and attend the hearing myself just to see exactly what's going on, because I do think that this one could be a big one in terms of what we're able to get on the record to the public, and then the combined with the legislation itself, if it does pass, would really be extraordinary.
Kane. She is an investigative journalist and the author of UFOs, Generals, Pilots, and Government Officials Go on the Record. Thank you for being with us, Leslie. I've heard a number of your comments lately, and it's really interesting that these conversations keep resurfacing for many different reasons. I just want to play for folks a brief soundbite from Air Force veteran David Grush to remind everyone how we got to this point. He's talking to journalist Ross Colhert, and he says he believes these spacecraft are not of this earth. Let's listen.
Why do you know it's exotic? Based on the very specific properties that I was briefed on, isotopic ratios that would have to be engineered for it to be at those levels, but also just extremely strange, heavy atomic metal, high up in the periodic table arrangements that we don't understand, what the emergent properties are, but there's just a very strange mix of elements.
Leslie, the whistleblower got a lot of attention, but skeptics will say that this was information he was briefed on and didn't see for himself. How would you characterize the impact of what he has shared so far leading to next week's hearing?
Oh, I think his impact has been huge, Marnie. I mean, the Congress has heard hours of testimony from him, as has the Inspector General of the intelligence community. And we also know that other whistleblowers have come forward and spoken to Congress as well. So he's not the only one, but his coming forward is really what has led to the hearing that's taking place next week. So I think it's had a huge impact.
Do you expect we'll learn more at this hearing, and who do you anticipate may testify?
Well, I know that the office of Tim Burchett, Representative Tim Burchett, who is one of the people who's going to chair this meeting, is going to have a press conference on Thursday. They're going to announce at that press conference the logistics and the details, and I assume they will announce who the witnesses are as well. I know of at least 3 that will be there. I'm not at liberty to disclose who they are, but we will be finding out very soon.
And in regards to Representative Burchett, he said this about pilots and the fact that they are not lying, he says, about what they're seeing. Take a listen.
We've had actually 13 near-miss encounters. And to think that, we've got a $50 million aircraft and some of the best pilots in the world who are risking their lives, why would they lie about it, honestly? All they're going to do is catch hell from their superiors, and this is ridiculous.
Leslie, you've spoken with pilots. Do they have any incentive to lie about what they've seen?
No, absolutely not, Marnie. I mean, you could imagine how detrimental that would be to their careers and their reputation, because if they were lying, eventually that would come out. I think the only argument anybody could make to question what they're saying is whether what they have seen is not some exotic technology, that it could be secret technology that we ourselves in the United States have developed, or possibly some other nation. That is a reasonable question to ask, but I think the idea of them lying outright is just makes no sense at all. It's just ridiculous.
Are the accounts from government officials and your sources consistent to some of the whistleblower statements that we have heard? Do the stories match up?
Absolutely, they do, Marnie. And I think that's what's so important, too, about David Grush, is for people to realize that he is not the only whistleblower referring to these exotic crashed objects that are of non-human origin. I have spoken to witnesses over the years, to people with clearances who have told me off the record the same things. And we know for a fact that others have also told Congress that. And these are people with firsthand knowledge, which David Grush didn't have. So, yes, there is a lot of confirmation from very highly respected and highly credentialed people in the intelligence community and elsewhere who have vouched for what he has said and have vouched for him as a credible and honest person.
Is this a turning point? We've seen these conversations happen at very high levels before, and a lot of information is still kept very secret. Do you expect that we'll learn any more at this point? And has the Pentagon taken this seriously in the past?
Well, I think we will learn more, Marnie, because we just are moving in that direction. And there are definitely members of Congress who want us to learn more. And we have this bill that was just proposed. It's actually an amendment to the National Defense Authorization Act by Chuck Schumer and his Republican colleague, Mike Rounds, a bipartisan amendment which would provide access to the public to many documents that have so far been kept hidden. So they're making an effort to bring forward a lot of documentation about UAP to the public arena. That's just one effort that's happening. So, yes, I do think we are going to learn more.
And we shall see next Wednesday. This hearing will take place. Leslie Kean, thank you for your time.
Intrigue about UFOs has picked up steam in Congress, and now the White House is signaling interest as well. When asked if the administration views unexplained sightings of objects in the air seriously, here's what White House National Security Council Coordinator Admiral John Kirby said in a press briefing on Monday. Let's watch.
Is it a real concern? Is it a real legitimate issue as you see it?
Yeah. I mean, we wouldn't have stood up an organization at the Pentagon to analyze and try to collect and coordinate the way these sightings are reported if we didn't take it seriously. Of course we do. I mean, some of these phenomena we know have already had an impact on our training ranges. For when pilots are out trying to do training in the air and they see these things, they're not sure what they are, and it can have an impact on their ability to perfect their skills. So it already had an impact here, and we just want to better understand it. Now, we're not saying what they are or what they're not. We're saying that there's something our pilots are seeing. We're saying it has had an effect on some of our training operations, and so we want to get to the bottom of it. We want to understand it better. So, yes.
Kirby also said the administration always strives to be as transparent as possible with Congress and the public. And over on Capitol Hill, the House Oversight Committee on UAPs and UFOs will hold a hearing on the phenomenon on July 26th. Congress members Anna Paulina Luna and Tim Burchett confirmed to News Nation. Here's UFO investigator and podcaster Jeremy Corbell speaking with News Nation on the matter.
If there's more voices like yours who are coming forward, what's the next step here then?
Right. So people have come forward to me and told me about their firsthand experiences with these exploitation programs. I have pushed people, Taro. I have pushed people to the Senate Intelligence Committee. So they need to continue hearing, doing, and actuating the legislation that they have put in place to cut off the funding. That's the carrot and the stick situation. Cut off the funding for illegal UAP reverse engineering programs, but turn it back on for acknowledged ones.
Have they reached out to you? Has anyone from Congress reached out to you? I mean, you're making some...
I can't say.
You can't say, but you won't
Sure.
deny.
No, I'm not denying that. I think it's been well established that I've been trying to assist this process.
And so if a congressional process needs to go forward, I guess when and how is that likely the next step?
Yeah,
when are we talking?
The writing's on the wall. I mean, we're going to have public, open congressional hearings that absolutely talk about this with people with direct knowledge. And I think that's really important to earn back the trust of the American public, because this has been corrosive. The over-classification and secrecy about UFOs and what they represent to humanity, that has been corrosive to public trust.
Again, it's people have come forward, is what he says. He knows these people. Who are they? Let's hear from them. It's just always hearing from a guy who knows a guy.
I'm going to be honest with you, Robbie. I came out strong, really wanting this to be a thing, and really excited about this story and this kind of coverage. The more that you have establishment politicians happily on board with this project, the more this feels like some kind of distraction tactic.
Oh, yeah, you're getting on the it's all a distraction.
I'm sorry. When John Kirby, look, I'm no body language expert, but when he was asked in that press briefing...
Body language experts are liars.
I mean, yeah, maybe that's it.
I love when they bring on
as a recommendation.
Like, oh, yeah, he looks...
But we feel like we have some sense of people's tells. Sure. And when he was asked in that hearing, are you guys taking this seriously? And he goes, yeah! And his voice is pitched up into the atmosphere. And he's got this kind of smile on his face, like he's not actually taking it seriously, like this is like a kind of a funny joke story. And then he pivots to talking about, well, yeah, it's affected our pilots and our service members, and there's something going on in the air. Well, if you thought there was actually some UFO that was negatively affecting our pilots' ability to do their jobs, that was a potential national security risk, that there was actual remains of a living, intelligent life that was found on Earth, I would expect there to be kind of a different tone. and what it feels like when we're in a world where John Kirby has kind of got a half smile on his face talking about this stuff, like he's talking about a news item about the president's dog. When you have, Chuck Schumer, who is introducing declassification bills, and when we know that so many of these declassification efforts can be performative because there is this national security interest exception that goes into all of these things, well, it starts to feel like there's a shared interest in us having a light, easy conversation about UFOs that's not going anywhere. And what is the alternative conversation that perhaps is less advantageous to the administration?
Look, I think we should have this declassification and accountability anyway, even if there's ultimately nothing to the rumors, reports of UAPs, UFOs. I think the government is knee-jerk, hides things from the American people out of habit. Sometimes because they really have something to hide, but also because they're just inclined towards secrecy. They would redact a grocery store list. That's just the way federal bureaucrats operate. Sure. I want to stop doing that. I think the American people deserve to know virtually everything our government knows, that there's way too much secrecy, and the secrecy allows for bad national security decisions. It allows people who guide our foreign policy to get away with criminally wrong-headed decisions. So I support doing all that, even if there's nothing to find. And I do believe, I'm sure the U.S. government has obtained technological, experimental technology, that Chinese spy balloon that crossed half the country.
Sure.
I'm sure there are things from other countries
Absolutely.
that we have come across
and
that we can't quite explain, or that the people who found them can't quite explain.
And even the story about the French scientist who was dredging up particles from the bottom of the ocean from some extra stellar object that had smashed into Earth, that seems very credible to me as well. But that's not a claim about aliens on Earth. That's a claim about some alien technology or something from outer space that has smashed into Earth that's like literally extraterrestrial, but not necessarily evidence that we have been visited per se. But those are different kinds of stories than I think what many people are imagining when they're looking to the declassification efforts here. And it's worth noting, we can't even get final declassification over the Kennedy assassination. This was a story from just 2 days ago. Biden, in the New York Times, Biden's final order on the Kennedy files leaves some still wanting more. And Branko Marcetic, who's a guest on the show from time to time, pointed out that there's a little bit of bombshell. So there's some interesting news that's still leaking out, buried within the coverage here at the New York Times, having to do with Lee Harvey Oswald and some witnesses that were in the room at various points in the investigation, that maybe this was a plant that was put there to witness the Warren report and make sure that it didn't stay too much. And, you can get into that and look into that yourself. But the fact that we can't even get clarity on a very terrestrial assassination that happened so many years ago that it's hard to imagine what the national security interest is, other than not wanting to be open about the fact of potential state action being implicated in an event like that, gives me some pause that there is really an effort at transparency when it comes to these bigger extraterrestrial questions.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we will continue to follow with much interest on our part.